There's not much left that can be said about the Wii. It made big records, sellout records, and has more shovelware than I care to even give an example of. Loved it or neglected it, the Wii has left its mark in the gaming industry, and since I've put this list off for quite some time, it only felt right to make sure that it lived up to its long overdue arrival. So for the first time on my channel, the list has doubled! Obvious fact from the title needed to be said. However, when I started to work on this list, trying to put the games on here felt strange. Also quite frustrating. Trying to not only find the right games to put on here, as well as their order was a daunting task that at the end of the day will never truly feel right to me. Except for the top 3. In fact, the list has been jumbled around from brainstorming session to the very end of the editing. Not to mention there's a few games I really wanted to play through, but just couldn't get into for one reason or... And some of you are probably wondering, why is this only 20 through 11? I could only focus on half of the list to help me concentrate, and because this is how much memory I had left, and here's the file containing the footage for just this video! I don't have enough electric blood to give. When it came down to the final verdict, I basically just looked over the games I enjoyed the most, or could keep my attention long enough, and narrowed it down to these lucky 20 entries. So without further ado, let's finally start it off! Some days when you reach your boiling point, the only way to cool off is to make something suffer. Just don't do something that'll get you into trouble. I know a good outlet for all that frustration. My poor Widow controller. I'm gonna button mash you so hard! No joke, I was actually in a pretty bad mood prior to recording footage for the list. Freaking internet connection. In fact, I wasn't even sure if I was going to include this game as it's been a while since I've played it. But after a little reminder, I came away feeling relaxed, calm, and embarrassed for even questioning that decision, thus cementing its place on my list, despite the fact that I tend to suck at traditional fighting games and I've never seen or read anything from the Tatsunoko universe. Although this Tekken Man Blade guy is pretty sweeper friendly, there's sadly not all that much to do. Training versus survival, arcade, time attack, and that's all that really matters. But the fast-paced action, flashy moves, bright colors, and seeing a character like Roll be a dominating force? Yeah, I'll get sucked in for a while. Be it a fighting game or an anime, I've always found it hard to believe that you can survive an attack that shakes the very ground, and or someone gets sliced through and survive, and then be done in by a simple 5 across the eyes. I don't even know how I did that! And yet just mindlessly pushing buttons still gives me some enjoyment. You can try and explain this stuff all you want, but you'd be wasting your time. I have no desire of ever going competitive in this, or any other fighting game for that matter. I keep pulling this stuff off without knowing, and believe it or not, I kinda prefer it that way. For me, it all feels random even though it's not, so I have no idea what's going to show up next, and that's kind of magical, in a sad sense. But if I ever did decide to learn the game properly, I might actually be pretty decent at it. Same old, same. Sometimes I need a game that plays completely different from just about anything else in existence. Even if it's not perfectly executed, you still get points for trying to be something that isn't like everything else. Just don't always expect too many of them. So how's this for a Wii title concept? A game that uses the motion-sensitive Wiimote, yet you never actually touch it. Some of you probably remember this one.
Let's tap.
Honestly, it was kind of a tough call for me between the first Rayman Raving Rabbits game and 19th place. Both can make for some rather memorable party games, with this being the greatest minigame in all of existence! But for feeling so special and unlike many other concepts, except for the bongo drums, I went for the off-beaten path. And since Tatsunoko had secured 20th place, just think of R as an unofficial 21st place for how much it amused me. Origins, you question? That solid platformer is best saved for another day. But for now, let's return to Let's Tap. Put the controller face down on a box and tap your troubles away! The more solid your box, the better it'll respond. Any little mistakes you make, you know you caused them to happen. Actual note to self. Soft, fast taps while balancing give the best results. It has a sort of appeal factor where you just look at it and say, huh, I kinda wanna try that. And if there's 4 people saying that together, then you've got yourself a fun afternoon! There is one huge problem. It's short. There's only 16 main levels. Kind of disappointing. To try and compensate for that, they added in some nice distractions just in case you feel like tapping for some other reason. It's one of the few games that makes me appreciate the creativity and originality that came from the motion controls. Someone saw it and said, I can do something simplistic and enjoyable with this, and that's really the beauty of it. Sure, there's a lot of games that forced the motion controls and felt gimmicky, but this game was made purely because of the concept, and I can personally say that if it played with traditional controls, I wouldn't have given it a second look. Heck, it couldn't even have its name if it did that. It'd probably be called A and B the Game, or Track and Field 3. Wow, we really haven't come that far, have we? This truck is fueled by Road Rage! So when the details of the Wiimote were first told, expectations about how you could play certain games started flowing around in my mind. Never got that amazing lightsaber game! And because we knew Mario Kart was such a big hitter, we'd eventually get steering with the controls. But we got this one right at the start! I've heard its sequel, Excitebots Racing, is better, but sadly I never got to add it to my collection. Crazy off-road driving, performing mid-air tricks, and changing the landscapes to throw everyone off, literally, helped this game live up to its title and predecessor. It's fast and frantic. My attention is held. Hope you like airtime, cause you almost can't stay on the ground for more than 10 seconds! I've touched Cloud 9 and made donuts on them! Have you tried driving past small trees with invincibility and not touch them? Why let that power go to waste and not bulldoze them? That? Plus I'd rather use it on my opponents and get more points for it! It took a very short amount of time for me to get the hang of the steering, but after that little crash course, it's hard for me to think that this game could have been better with traditional controls. It's first come, first love when it comes to being the first one to do it right. And did I mention it's one of the few Wii games where you could use the songs you have on an SD card that play during the game? No, I don't know why other games didn't do this as well. For being a launch title, it hit a lot of the right spots. And everything else in your way.
17th place. It's a Wii! Wario!
The Wii was home to more party games than any system should ever have. That being said, it's not like there weren't some really good ones out there, and number 17 is not only the frosting on the cake, but it's still the best way to get someone to understand what you can do with the Wiimote. I remember when Smooth Moves was shown at E3 2006, and being a lucky Wii owner at the launch, there was no way I was going to pass this one up when it was available early 2007, when it lacks in depth and makes up for in variety. Sound a bit weird? You must be unfamiliar with WarioWare. Strange is in its DNA. There's so many ways to use the Wiimote, and when you play with other people, you've got a party game that lasts for hours. I know, I've done it. And not to brag, but I did get a coworker to buy the system just because of this game. The only two pieces of advice I can offer are to use your whole body and keep that wrist strap on. There will be some mini games you won't get right away, but when you do figure them out, it feels like an accomplishment. That lasts for 3 seconds before the next minigame starts. Familiar and new faces show up with exciting new ways to play through their collections, but I'm going to take a guess and say that everyone's favorite part was 9-volt for the mini recreated Nintendo moments, and some of the ones that got bizarre. Now he's too old to use the Master Sword. If you thought I wasn't going to bring up the Star Fox boss fight, then welcome to my channel. Be on the lookout for a Star Fox Zero review. Smooth Moves is still as addictive and fun today as it was back then. I just wish it had a little more to offer. Can't help but be a little greedy here. Wario will have that effect on people.
16th place.
There are plenty of reasons why people play games. The most basic of them all is because they're just plain fun. Or maybe they touch home a little too closely. Or give us the opportunity to become something or do something that we could never do in real life. Or even visit places beyond our wildest imagination, or could be based on a real-world location that maybe we'd like to play tourist, but don't have the opportunity to. I'm sure there's plenty more reasons, but for this entry, let's focus on that last example as it's the more ironically appropriate one. I've probably spent more days of my life in this place than I have in elementary school, and it never gets old. Welcome, one and all, to the Messed Up Kingdom. As someone who was practically raised on Main Street USA with Mickey ear hats and an autographed book, there's so many little things I can pick up on and appreciate the level of depth these guys threw in. It's hard to take one step without getting ambushed by some direct references to some of the most iconic rides in Disneyland history, as well as Mickey's. Just look at that detail! That's incredible! How did they get Mickey's ears to move like that? Mickey Lesson 128. The mouse's ears always move on the circumference of his head when he turns or looks sideways. You gotta respect their respect to the heritage and lineage of the mouse that basically owns mine and nearly everyone's childhood. It's a shame the platforming part of the game lacked that same level of dedication, and I admit, there are some times where I wonder if the recommendation level was fair enough, and Mickey's game is the one I question the most. But it was also one of the few games on the Wii where I played it again right after beating it, and there aren't many games that I'll do that nowadays with, as time's a wastin'. Whenever I do get the chance to play through it, I end up discovering something I never knew before. Few games give me that kind of discovery. That's some good replay value, and that's not even counting all the differences your choices can make. It's been a long time since I got to enjoy playing a game as the money-making mouse, not counting this. So seeing him go through a familiar yet twisted version of the happiest place on earth was a fun ride. I just wish it didn't feel so bumpy at times, or make me get back in line to experience the whole thing. The game doesn't really feel like it lives up to its name, but seeing Mickey get serious at times, it comes the closest he's ever gotten. Unless Kingdom Hearts 3 has anything to say about it.
15th place.
Here's a question I could ask that I completely understand the confusion behind. Why is a game you give a high recommendation level lower than one you give a lower one to on your list? I think it's about high time I at least gave part of that answer. You'll have to wait another day for the second half. When I review a game, I try to be as fair as possible. I said try! But when I make a list, notice how it usually says, personal? I can be as biased as I want to be, even if it's just a little bit of the game that I enjoy. That eensy weensy little thing could keep me coming back for more, even if the majority of the package could repel me. For example, I wouldn't play through Sonic Unleashed story again, but good luck keeping me from running in the sunlight. And when a game lets me revisit just about any part after playing through it, well, that's what I call a dream come true. I'm not apologizing. The sequel to the Saturn Classic was received with some less than stellar reviews, and I can honestly see why. But that doesn't stop me from loving the levels where you fly through rings. And I know what some of you are thinking. Rest assured it's not what you're imagining. Flying through them increases your score and boost meter, so it's a good incentive. And the original Saturn game came out before Soup Scheme did, so learn yourself. Journey of Dreams has some rather memorable levels that do what they can to freshen things up.
Multiple me's!
Giant mode.
And objects seen only in the mirror are just in one level alone. Colorful, bright, happy, and a soundtrack that really makes me feel like I'm flying through the air, and my only care is getting a better grade. The best equivalent I can give is that it's basically 2D Sonic gameplay without that pesky land getting in your way. Good on you, Yuji Naka, for recycling that concept and doing what you do so well, even if you didn't have a hand in this installment. Some of the bosses are debatable. The other missions have nowhere near as pleasing a feel, except for this one. The story comes off as way too cheesy, the controls can sadly be a bit stiff at times, and there's only 7 main flying levels. But I could spend countless nights just going through these same stages and not get bored to sleep. Still not apologizing.
14th place.
When you get a new console, the first thing you want to do is play something new. With this new power comes new games of awesomeness. But you should be ready to see some of those games you've grown fond of return as either remakes, compilations, or ports of older games. Whether it's for the sake of keeping a game relevant, testing the water, or just to make a fast dollar, you're going to see it. A lot. But I guess as long as it's got a new coat of paint, brought some gifts, and or invited some good buddies along with them, then it's hard not to look forward to their release. Hello, RE4. Are you ready to do this all over again?
It's game time.
I won't blame you if you're sick of hearing about this game by now, so don't worry. I won't be spending that much time drooling over its great gameplay, memorable moments, and frightening fights. Because many of you still know how good it is anyways. It's basically the GameCube version, I think, with the PS2 extras and motion controls.
Better try a new trick, cause that one's getting old.
Yeah, that might sound off-putting by today's gamers, but it's mostly used for aiming, and getting headshots is kind of a big deal as it can save on bullets. That stuff doesn't grow on trees, they just fall out of some of your victims' decaying corpses. I'm telling you, merchant, if you carried ammo, you'd be a rich man.
Buy it at a high price.
If it would be used for saving my life, take my life savings. I leave nothing to chance with some of these guys, especially the "Hey pal, can I grab a bite?" No! Forget the dark! Corners are where the real monsters hide! No flashlight's ever gonna help with that.
13th place.
While I'm still on the topic of remakes, ports, and compilations, I have to say that I enjoyed seeing so many of them during this console generation, mainly on the PS3. But does it bother anyone's wallet when they come out with a new game for a system, and then put it in a compilation for the same system? Well, if you love blasting space pirates, then the only problem you'll have is seeing it this low on my list. Separately, I've beaten these games on their own disc, but I've had little time to actually play through the entry itself. Isn't that wrong to put a game on the list if you haven't finished it? This is sort of in the gray area. I already enjoy using the Wiimote to incinerate pirate scum, and this mini-boss went from annoying to, wow, I remember that being so much harder! Even if I didn't allow the collection on here, Prime 3 would have taken up a spot on the list instead, so why not have all of them join in? Even Echoes with its double backtracking and light umbrellas feels so good when you can freely aim and look around. Hey, I can do a morph ball bounce just by flicking the Wiimote upwards. That's handy. Even graphically speaking, these games still hold up incredibly well. The atmosphere is some of the best and well-crafted you will ever see in a game, and the attention to detail in every little thing only helps immerse the player even further. I never get tired of pretending to feel that. I still have my issues with these games. But fewer games had received so much negativity from the fans while being made by an unknown company, only to be admired as some of the best in the series and recognized as one of Nintendo's best developers. That's a real accomplishment right there. I really hope Federation Force turns out to be amazing just to see the shocked reactions all over again.
12th
Courage is the magic that turns dreams into reality.
A sequel to my favorite JRPG on the GameCube? Woo! You shouldn't have. Dawn of the New World gets a lot of hate behind it for blank reasons, and I don't care about most of that because there's some nice upgrades here. Like the presentation that has been noticeably improved. Think of the difference between Sonic Adventure 1 and 2's model movements, and you couldn't find a better comparison. The skits now have voice acting to them, which can really help bring out the personality in the characters, and Tenebrae is the best character by far!
You mean to say you like me best of all? I must admit I'm stunned.
That's not fair, Tenebrae! I won't let you steal him from me!
This is starting to get old.
They took the free roam mechanic from Vesperia, which helps for distracting some enemies, and fallen monsters could be your best allies. Sadly, they can't use items, and there's only 2 new characters who are on your team for a majority of the game, and the returning cast can't even get experience points! What? Traveling in the open fields doesn't exist, and the difficulty of the dungeons has been drastically reduced. Yet, I still enjoyed the combat. I never get tired to keep it up, and while I can understand the relationship between Emil and Mardo might be worthy to some, I honestly didn't mind it at all and thought it was actually kind of, for lack of a better word, cute.
Fine! You know what? Well, I do love you, but I hate you!
I guess being a target of affection is difficult.
You're enjoying this, aren't you?
I, for one, saw Emil's split personality as a nice coming of age, and the story used elements that were from the previous title, but weren't in the main storyline. So it's using its own mythos, which I like as it helps make the world they live in feel fully thought out. It may have had more old than new, but when the world was already explored to the brim before, I don't mind retreading some old grounds.
We rocked! You want some lessons on the L word from the master?
You mean loser?
Kids these days are so mean.
11th place.
It dawned on me when I finally got to this part. Because I never made a list that went past 10, I have very rarely had to make a countdown continuation. So this is the first time for a list where I have to leave a good setup for part 2 to follow. Can't wait to screw it up! I mean, I already know I ticked off a couple of people already, might as well give them some company. Heck, I'll even sell you the equipment. Right this way, angry viewers, pitchforks on the left, torches on the right. I'm gonna be a rich dead man! And all I can say is that the second best-selling Wii game only made 11th? Get ready to see some big stuff next time. I'd probably have more memories of Mario Kart Wii if it wasn't for its terrible timing. It released just a little over a month after Brawl did. I never get tired of a new Smash game after a month. Heck, sometimes not even after 2 years. I wasn't ready for Mario to stop faring and go karting again so soon. Because of that, it has become one of the Mario Kart games I played the least. I don't even think I unlocked everything. My experience in the online mode is even shorter despite having a better but still somewhat laggy run compared to Wii Smash. That being said, the game is still ridiculously fun in its own right. When it comes to Mario Kart, there are 2 very important elements that make the world of difference for me. Power-ups and courses. In my book, it was kinda like a trade-off. They brought back classic tracks, and the new courses were some of the best the series had to offer in terms of destroying friendships on. A number of them had branching paths, plenty of shortcuts, and started to shake things up. Then you factor in that this game had also given us the ability to perform tricks when going off ramps and bounces. And what does that get you? That feeling that made the classic Sonic games so great. Speed for a reward. You get an A for courses, but this grade on your power-ups is a bit concerning. Here we get 3 new additions. One you don't get unless you suck, so I barely got to use it. One that is only a minor annoyance. And then we have Tag You're Zapped. Well, we can't all be Double Dash, and at least you didn't leave anywhere near as sour a note as the coins did. But I'm afraid the games that finished 10 places ahead of you did it when you got hit by that 4th blue shell in a row. A pity.